Facts First presents Rarely Seen Historical Photos That'll Leave You Speechless. While a picture can speak 1,000 words, historical images speak a lot more. A solid blast from the past photo can teleport you to another place and time, letting you imagine and even empathize with people and things not possible otherwise. Here we've assembled a handful of rarely seen historical photos that might leave you speechless. We can do it. The students of James A. Garfield High School checking in for work on December 10, 1943 at the school's airplane plant. The Second World War was fought both on the battlefield and on the home front. When men had to serve in Asia and Europe, women back home were manning positions in military and civilian factories. Star Wars behind the scenes. Actors from the first movie from the Star Wars trilogy, Mark Hamill, Peter Mayhew, Kenny Baker, and Carrie Fisher, are pictured May 20, 1980 in the UK. The sets of Star Wars were kind of like the movie, absolutely thrilling. In fact, the actors in it became close friends while shooting the film. Carrie Fisher was extremely funny and could be seen pranking around, chasing other members of the cast with squirt guns and making Mark Hamill put on her outfits. That's just a couple of the mischievous things the crew remembers her doing. Lady Liberty. The under-construction Statue of Liberty in Paris's Monduit and Bechet plant in 1883. Lady Liberty is, to the surprise of many, Libertas, the Roman goddess. France gifted this statue to America. It was designed by Frederick Auguste Bartholdi, a French sculptor. Gustave Eiffel, the man who did the engineering work, he built the tower's metal framework. Though not confirmed, it's believed the face of Lady Liberty was based on Bartholdi's mother. Globe making. Thanks to industrialization, globe manufacturing is no more a real profession. This still is from 1933 when globes were usually made from wooden balls. The maps were separately painted on paper strips and were later glued on to the globe. Today, machines are used to stick printed maps onto plastic globes. The current outputs could be a lot more accurate, but they certainly lack the old-school charm. West End. A musical play called Teeth and Smiles was penned by David Hare, which premiered at West End in London in 1975. The play revolved around the tale of a faltering rock band that comes to perform at the University of Cambridge. The role of the band's singer, Maggie Frisbee, was played by Helen Mirren. Designing Disneyland. Disney could truly envision things. He aspired to erect a place where adults and kids could have fun together, and he worked on that idea for years. In this photo, he can be seen standing beside the Disneyland model in 1954. His inspiration came from playgrounds, the History Museum of Henry Ford, the World Exposition, etc. Disneyland's launch day was set aside for journalists only. However, only 15,000 of the 30,000 attendees were actually invited. The other half entered with fake tickets. First days of camping. This picture is from a 1934 caravan site. In 1907, J. Harrison Stone, a journalist by profession, came up with the Caravan Club for travelers. Well, fast forward 25 years and camping trips became popular as several families owned cars. Currently, Stone's Club has more than 1 million members traveling to close to 3,000 camping locations across England. One-wheel car. The Dynasphere, which is an electrically driven wheel, is being tested here by J.A. Purves on the beach in Taunton. He co-invented the wheel with his son. The Dynasphere was built to be used by one person. Capable of clocking about 30 miles per hour, the original model came with a simple engine that propelled the machine. To turn the wheel, one had to lean sideways and tip the thing. Ronald McDonald. A Washington local TV star, Willard Scott, played the character of Bozo the Clown prior to playing Ronald McDonald. Bozo was loved by kids back then. So when the show was terminated, Scott was offered to come with a fresh clown character that would serve as McDonald's mascot. As per rumors, only one actor plays Ronald's role at official events and in commercials at a given time. Claude Monet. This picture is of the French Impressionist painter Claude Monet in 1923. Monet can be seen standing with the vast water lily canvases in the background that he painted during the final few years of his life in the Givery Garden. Monet was the founder of the Impressionist movement that emphasized on drawing reality as seen by the artist. Unfortunately, Monet's eyesight deteriorated during his later years, which limited his vision and drawing abilities. Rising Star. This picture is of Milla Jovovich, a 13-year-old actress with her picture on the cover of Lee magazine in 1988. Born in Ukraine, Milla became an American actress, supermodel, singer, musician, and clothing designer. Her first breakthrough was when she got cast in Return to the Blue Lagoon as the protagonist. The controversial role fetched her a nomination for Best Young Actress at the Young Artists Awards. She was also nominated in the Worst New Actress category at the Golden Raspberry Awards for the same role. Building Rushmore. This image is a staged picture of a worker dangling from the eyelid of Jefferson on Mount Rushmore in 1934. Sculpting the U.S. presidents on the mountain was an uphill task. Literally, it took close to 13 years. A total of 400 people worked to get the presidents carved. Originally, the plan was to sculpt the presidents' bodies as well, but the project ran short on money and time, and so only the heads were carved. Back from space. This picture shows Apollo 11's commander and the first human to step on the Moon, Neil Armstrong, celebrating his 39th birthday in 1969. It was in Manned Spacecraft Center Crew's reception area, which is in Houston, Texas' Lunar Receiving Laboratory. NASA's Apollo team were the first set of people to land on the Moon and were considered national heroes. The celebration was during the Cold War, with the objective to let the world know that America was the real global power. Doing a man's job. Though the First World War was fought in Europe, America had to undergo hardships as well. Since the majority of young U.S. men were drafted into the military, various industries had no option but to replace people who were on national duties. So as a result, women were hired to perform men's jobs, such as carrying ice. The refrigerator hadn't been invented yet, and placing a big ice block in ice boxes was how people kept their food fresh and cool. Frida Kahlo. Frida Kahlo was a Mexican artist that painted surrealistic self-portraits. She was also known for her fierce character. She challenged norms of her times by wearing men's clothes and being in an open marriage with painter Diego Rivera. In this picture from 1926, she can be seen with Christina, her sister, Matilda, her mother, and other members of her family. Train of Tomorrow. The American citizen of the mid-20th century loved being futuristic. The country's new prosperity post-war created optimism all around, with automakers faring better than ever before. Engineers and designers with a futuristic mindset, they wanted to make the ideal modern America family vehicle. In this picture, taken in 1947, you can see Train of Tomorrow's observation lounge car that was made by General Motors. The train is currently on a countrywide exhibit tour of America's major cities. Big in Japan. In the 1970s, the band Queen was synonymous with youth rebellion. Their modern clothes and long hair defied gender norms, and the operatic vocals of Freddie Mercury and the band's innovative style redefined music. In 1975, Queen toured the world, starting in Canada and summing it up in Japan, performing in 7 different Japanese cities. This phase constituted their career's greatest moments. They recorded Sheer Heart Attack and A Night at the Opera that same year. Modern Age Cars. The 1950s arguably redefined the U.S. automobile industry. Cars symbolized modernization and prosperity, which explains why most cars from that period looked like airplanes. In this picture, you can see models posing with an assortment of GM cars in the year 1956 in Michigan. The Eiffel Tower. A worker painting the tower in 1953. The Eiffel Tower was initially commissioned for Paris's World Exposition in 1889. The tower's height is more than 1,000 feet high, and it took 2 years to erect. When it was built, several hundred artists joined in protest, claiming this iron construction would ruin Paris. Guy de Maupassant, the French writer, used to lunch in the Eiffel Tower so that he couldn't see the tower itself. Playing football. a high school football team from the early 1910s. Also called the gridiron, American football is basically soccer and rugby put together, along with a few add-ons. The very first game of football was played between Princeton and Rutgers, two college teams, in November of 1869. The NFL, the National Football League, was first set up in 1920, but back then it was known as the APFA, the American Professional Football Association. A huge harmonica. China invented the harmonica several thousand years ago. However, the Americans got introduced to it only during the 19th century. The harmonica was embraced by the Americans almost instantly. It was cheap, easy to build, and small, usually. Learning to play the instrument was quite straightforward as well, which increased its reach among blues and folk musicians. In the picture, two girls are trying to play a huge bluebird harmonica inside a London music store in 1938. Uniform check. During the 1960s, flying was becoming quite affordable. Therefore, to entice and appeal more to potential customers, airlines introduced very skimpy flight crew uniforms. Many airlines became household names for their adventurous crew attire. However, by the mid-1970s, that trend slowly faded out. In the photo, Beatrice Pleasdale, BOAC stewardess, is at the London airport sporting the paper dress uniform. Plain wing tennis. This picture made its way to a postcard released in the 1920s. It depicted a common practice during that time, playing tennis atop of a wing of an aircraft cruising at close to 60 miles per hour. 1940s fashion. During the 40s and 50s, this bra style was quite popular. Women have used different garments and equipment to make their breasts look a certain way. During the latter part of the 19th century, corsets were replaced by bras as a widely used breast support tool. By the 20th century, garments that looked more like the modern bras of today emerged. Garry Kasparov loses to a computer. Garry Kasparov, an all-time chess great, was defeated in 1997 by a computer at a game of chess. The reactions of Kasparov and the crowd witnessing it clearly indicated that the computers back then weren't advanced enough to beat a chess champion at their own game. Pursuit. O.J. Simpson evading the cops, June 17, 1994. Mr. Simpson was undoubtedly one of among the most popular American football players in NFL history. However, on the personal front, things weren't that great. In 1994, Nicole Brown Simpson, his ex-wife, was found dead at her L.A. home alongside Ron Goldman. Apparently, she'd been stabbed. Simpson was the natural suspect in the murders due to his troubled past with Nicole. He didn't turn himself in. On June 17th, O.J. Simpson was involved in a low-speed chase by the police. He was in a white Ford Bronco SUV that was driven and owned by Al Cowlings. First class. Steward and air hostesses serving the Scandinavian country-style buffet on the SAS Scandinavian Airlines in 1969. Several decades ago, tourism was considered a luxury and not many people could afford flying in an airplane. Tourism by plane turned into a reality only around 1930. SAS, founded in 1946, is the flagship carrier of mainland Scandinavia, which includes Sweden, Denmark, and Norway. SAS's service was and is great always. Jesse Owens winning gold in 1936 in Nazi Germany. Despite all the animosity, Jesse proved his mettle. Owens was an Afro-American track and field athlete from America who won 4 gold medals in the 1936 Olympic Games that were held in Nazi Germany. Jesse had an extremely successful stint at the Berlin Summer Olympics, and he single-handedly macerated Hitler's Aryan supremacy myth. In his honor, America awards the Jesse Owens Award to the best track and field athletes every year. Under construction. The Golden Gate Bridge construction of 1936. A suspension bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge connects Marin County to San Francisco's peninsula. The bridge is arguably the most globally recognized American symbol, with the ASCA, the American Society of Civil Engineers, declaring it a modern world wonder. The bridge is considered by many travel guides the most photographed and most beautiful bridge in the entire world. Having fun. Princess Diana having fun at an amusement center with Prince Harry, April 1992. Princess Diana always wanted her children to have a regular childhood, though they were next in line for the throne. The late princess believed the monarchy must understand and know the life of commoners. Sadly, Princess Diana died in a car accident in 1997 in Paris at the young age of only 36. First marriage of Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe entered wedlock thrice, despite being only 36 at the time of her death in 1962. James Doherty, her first husband, was an LA cop. Monroe was only 16 when she married him. After James, Marilyn married Joe DiMaggio, a baseball center fielder, in 1955, and Arthur Miller, a playwright, in 1956. Entertaining. The 101st Airborne's Private James R. Hendrix, playing guitar at Kentucky's Fort Campbell in 1962. Although James Hendrix's music career lasted only 4 years, James is widely seen as an influential electric guitarist and one of the 20th century's most celebrated musicians. According to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Jimi Hendrix is undoubtedly one of the most eminent instrumentalists in rock music's history. A massive manta ray. A huge manta ray captured in 1933 on the New Jersey coast. The massive oceanic manta ray goes down as the largest ray type in the world. Typically they're found in the waters of tropical and subtropical regions, but can also be seen in temperate waters. While they look like huge sea creatures, they're actually extremely benign and gentle. Their food primarily consists of plankton, which are tiny microorganisms floating in ocean water. The King of Rock. Elvis Presley's swearing in for the mandatory Army service in 1958 in Arkansas. The Rock and Roll King served in the American Army for 2 years, between 1958 and 1960. During his draft, Elvis was already a massive star and well-known worldwide. He was therefore offered to enter the Special Services as an entertainer and use the priority housing privilege, but he denied the offer and he served as a regular troop member instead. This earned him his fellow soldiers' respect and also the respect of the people of America. A toast. On December 5, 1933, the nationwide alcohol ban in America was repealed. The U.S. government, in January of 1919, passed the 21st Constitution Amendment that prohibited production, transportation, sale, and import of alcohol. The prohibition came into place in the first place as the government believed alcohol led to poverty and crime. However, the prohibition instead caused crime rates to go up in the U.S. as gangsters were minting money selling alcohol in the black market. As a result, prohibition was canceled on February 20, 1933. Exposing the Sphinx. The partially excavated Great Sphinx of Giza, 1860s. The Great Sphinx of Giza basically is a statue of a lounging sphinx, which is a mythical creation with a human head and a lion's body. Made of limestone, the statue is Egypt's oldest known monumental construction that the ancient Egyptians supposedly built between 2558 and 2532 BC. The Blue Tattoo. Olive Oatman was basically a Mormon pioneer who voyaged west to Zion in 1851. The 13-year-old was captured on her way by Yavapai Indians who killed her family and enslaved her. Olive remained a slave for about a year before being trafficked to the Mojave people. They drew tattoos on her face, raising Olive as one of their own. Though the Mojaves kept her happy, she was traded back to the whites when she was 19. And this got her some fame, but the price she paid for that was a broken and painful childhood that she would never get over the rest of her life. Kiss Goodbye. American soldiers bidding adieu to their families before heading for Egypt, 1963. The Civil War in North Yemen was fought between 1962 and 1970. Saudi Arabia and Jordan provided military aid to the Royalists, and Britain offered covert support. Egypt supported the Republicans, with the Soviet Union supplying them airplanes. Open-air schools. An open-air school in the Netherlands in 1957, which is now defunct. Open-air schools prevented tuberculosis from spreading, a common occurrence during the period before World War II. Since fresh air could help with improving health, The schools back then were erected in rural locations, away from the hustle and bustle of the cities. However, curtains were drawn on the majority of these schools during the 1970s. Deadwood, 1876. The Deadwood settlement started illegally during the 1870s on areas that legally belonged to the Native Americans. George Armstrong Custer in 1874 led a voyage into Black Hills and declared gold discovery on French Creek close to the modern-day Custer in South Dakota. As a result, a gold rush was triggered in the region, giving birth to the new and illegal town of Deadwood. Easter eggs. American soldiers belonging to the 969th Artillery Battalion decorated shells they delivered to Germany's front line, 1944. America joined World War II in 1941 after Pearl Harbor was attacked by the Japanese. They joined hands with the allied nations of France, the United Kingdom, and Poland that were fighting Italy, Japan, and Germany. The U.S. sentiment was usually anti-German, even prior to joining the war. Ancient Seal. The 3,245-year-old Tutankhamun tomb seal before being broken, 1922. Tutankhamun was the 18th dynasty Egyptian pharaoh who ruled between 1332 and 1323 BC. The discovery of the nearly intact tomb of Tutankhamun in 1922 by Howard Carter garnered worldwide attention. People became curious about ancient Egypt again, which explains why the Tutankhamun mask is popular even today. Polluted skies. 1969. Prior to the EPA's creation, New York was among the most polluted cities in America. Starting in the late 50s and the 60s, growing public concern about human activity's impact on the environment was paid heed to by the state. In 1962, a Rachel Carson book, Silent Spring, warned the people about pesticides' negative impact on the environment. Pro-environment civil groups started protesting thereafter. The EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, as a result, was set up in December of 1970. A reprieve from war. A kitten being held by a Red Army soldier during World War II. Wars pit humans against humans. Several times this creates sympathy within warring soldiers toward animals. For instance, American forces employed several thousand animals during the Second World War. Several World War II American military units adopted animals as mascots. These mascots were pets that actually belonged to the squad's men. The Snipers. The female snipers of the 3rd Shock Army, 1st Belarusian Front, 1945. The Second World War was a period during which Russia faced major military challenges. Due to this, several women were recruited into combat units. Sniping was a military branch that they truly excelled in. More than 2,000 female snipers served in the Soviet military. Satisfied audience. Marilyn Monroe staging a performance for several thousand Allied troops stationed in Korea. February 11, 1954. Monroe, in January 1954, married Joe DiMaggio. For their honeymoon, the two flew to Japan. Joe visited his baseball clinics. Monroe, on the other hand, detoured to Korea. Marilyn journeyed to a place where the U.S. military was stationed and put up 10 shows for approximately 100,000 servicemen. Seeking employment in 1930. The Great Depression, which lasted for 4 years, between 1929 and 1933, was a period of high unemployment in America. It's in fact viewed as the worst financial downturn ever. A look from above. Hiroshima, prior to and after the bomb that hit the city, August 6, 1945. During the end phases of the Second World War, America dropped 2 nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan on the 6th and 9th of August 1945, respectively. In Hiroshima, anywhere between 90,000 to 146,000 people died. Half died directly because of the bombing. The remaining died due to the bomb's side effects. Sadly, the people who died were mostly civilians. Encounter of Cultures. A samurai group in front of the Sphinx in Egypt, 1864. Diverse, historic cultures coming together can be both hard and fun to imagine. That's what happened when a Japanese samurai group headed to Egypt during the 19th century. During the period, the samurai culture was on the decline. The Sphinx was rediscovered very recently at that time, making the samurai group's visit quite a rare event. The HMS Daphne. Slaves who were rescued from the HMS Daphne deck, 1868. HMS Daphne was the Royal Navy's Amazon-class sloop that worked on anti-slavery missions off of the African East Coast. As vessels were transporting slaves to Aden on Zanzibar's main slaving route, the Royal Navy commissioned to offer robust policing in the Indian Ocean. After the Slave Trade Act in 1807 that was passed by Parliament, the Royal Navy sent several ships to help stop slave trade. Celebrations. Celebrations of the triumph over Nazi Germany, May 9, 1945, Moscow. Most Allied nations celebrate Victory Day on the 8th of May. However, the Soviet Union celebrates the victory on May 9th, a day later. In this picture, Moscow can be seen lit up, celebrating the sovereign state's triumph over the Nazis, which marked the conclusion of a grueling, long, and hugely traumatic war. The Alliance. The Eight-Nation Alliance troops in 1900. The Boxers, a Chinese covert unit, had killed several Chinese Christians, foreign nationals, and missionaries across the north of China between 1899 and 1900. The Eight-Nation Alliance basically was a global military coalition established by Russia, Japan, France, Britain, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Italy, and the United States in response to the Chinese Boxer Rebellion. Troops belonging to the 8 countries invaded and took control of Peking on August 14, 1900. U.S. Marines. U.S. Marines hitting rough water to take the Cape Gloucester Beach in New Britain, 1943. The Cape Gloucester battle happened between December 26, 1943 and January 16, 1944 between American and Australian forces and Japan. In this picture, American troops are wading through the shallow waters after disembarking their ship tank and heading to the shore, while the waters are gushing and surging around them. The final picture of the afloat Titanic, 1912. This picture was captured by John Moreau on April 11, 1912, somewhere around 2 p.m. as the massive Titanic was departing from Queenstown, Ireland. The Titanic sank in April 1912, ramming into an iceberg during its first voyage to New York City. Of the 2,224 crew members and passengers aboard, over 1,500 of them died. First flight of the Wright brothers. The first plane flight was on the 17th of December, 1903. It lasted 12 seconds, only to be surpassed by a 59-second flight later that same day. The brothers invented the 3-axis control that helped steer the aircraft and maintain its equilibrium. Eruption of Mount St Helens, Washington. May 18, 1980, Mount St Helens erupted, leaving behind a horseshoe-shaped crater. Mount St Helens' large eruptive cone consists of a lava rock that's interlayered with deposits such as pumice and ash. The mountain comprises layers of andesite and basalt, through which multiple dacite lava domes have erupted. Futuristic postcards. Looking at a 1900 picture that depicted what the Germans envisioned the year 2000 would look like is quite amusing. The sentiment this postcard depicts is really untrue. Humans created technologies during the 20th century that shortened travel time and made talking to people from any part of the world a reality. Earthquake and fire in San Francisco in 1906. San Francisco saw mass destruction in 1906, thanks to an earthquake that struck the city on April 18, 1906. However, the real damage was courtesy of the fires that were set off thereafter. Close to 3,000 people lost their lives, more than 80% of the city was wrecked. The series of events goes down as one of the most deadliest and worst earthquakes in America's history. Subscribe for more.